You bought the car to feel successful, not to get somewhere, to feel like someone. That distinction matters more than almost anything else in personal finance. Because the hidden status game is not about money, it is about identity. And if you do not understand it, it will quietly drain your wealth for decades without you ever realizing why. Here is what nobody explains clearly enough. Human beings are not primarily rational economic actors. We are social animals, and social animals are wired to constantly scan their environment for signals of where they stand in the group. For most of human history, status determined access to food, safety, mates, and survival. Your position in the group was not abstract. It was life or death. That ancient wiring did not disappear when modern economies were invented. It just found new objects to attach itself to. Instead of displaying dominance through physical strength or tribal rank, modern humans display it through consumption. The car you drive, the neighborhood you live in, the watch on your wrist, the vacation you post about. These are not neutral purchases. They are status signals, and the economy is engineered to exploit exactly that. Thorstein Veblen saw this more than a century ago. In 1899, the economist and sociologist described what he called conspicuous consumption, the practice of spending money not for utility, but for visibility, to signal to others that you have the resources to spend. Veblen noticed that as societies became wealthier, people did not simply save the difference. They found more expensive ways to signal their position. The form changed. The underlying drive never did. What Veblen could not have fully anticipated was how sophisticated the machinery of status signaling would become. Today, trillion-dollar industries exist for one primary purpose: to convert your social anxiety into a purchase. Fashion houses do not sell fabric. They sell membership in a perceived class. Car manufacturers do not sell transportation. They sell the story you tell yourself about who you are when you pull into the parking lot. Social media platforms do not sell connection. They sell a stage on which to perform your version of success for an audience, and the game is designed so that you can never actually win it. Robert Frank, the Cornell economist who spent decades studying expenditure cascades, documented something that should stop you cold. When incomes rise in a community, spending patterns shift upward across the entire group. Not just among the wealthy, everyone around them starts spending more too. The family that was perfectly comfortable with their home suddenly feels the invisible pressure of the neighborhood shifting around them. The car that felt fine last year feels inadequate next to the newer models appearing on the street. The vacation that felt luxurious starts to feel ordinary when everyone around you seems to be going further. This is not imagination. This is documented economic behavior. Frank called it expenditure cascades. The people at the top spend more. The people just below them adjust to keep pace. That adjustment ripples all the way down the income ladder. The result is that people at nearly every income level spend more than they need to, not because their needs changed, but because the reference point around them shifted. Think about what that actually means for your financial life. Your spending is not just a function of what you earn or what you need. It is a function of who you are watching. And in an era of social media, you are watching everyone, not just your neighbors, not just your coworkers. You are watching curated highlights from people across the entire world. Every day, your brain is updating its reference point for normal, for successful, for enough, and that reference point keeps moving upward. That is not an accident. That is the architecture. The behavioral economist Richard Thaler, who won the Nobel Prize in economics in 2017, spent much of his career studying the gap between how humans actually make decisions and how economic models assume we do. One of his most important findings concerns what he called mental accounting. People do not treat all money as equivalent. They assign money to emotional categories. The money you spend on something that makes you feel successful does not feel the same as the money you spend on groceries. It feels justified. It feels like investment, even when it is the opposite. That is the trap inside the trap. The status purchase rarely feels like a status purchase from the inside. It feels like a reasonable decision. It feels like quality. It feels like you have simply decided that you deserve better. And maybe you do deserve better. But there is a difference between spending that genuinely improves your experience and spending that primarily functions as a signal to other people about your value. Before we continue, here's something worth thinking about. Many people believe financial freedom comes from earning more money. In reality, it comes from making better decisions over and over again. That's exactly why I wrote Financial Freedom Blueprint. It shows you how everyday financial choices compound into a life with more options, less stress, and greater freedom. If you'd like to explore these ideas in more depth, you'll find the book linked in the description. Now, let's get back to the video. Most people cannot tell the difference, not because they are foolish, because the system is specifically designed to blur that line. Consider what the hidden status game actually costs across a life. Someone who earns a solid middle-class income and consistently spends at the upper edge of what their peer group spends on cars, housing, clothing, and experiences will feel financially normal throughout their life. Their spending will track closely to their income. They will feel like they are living appropriately for who they are. But by the time they approach retirement, they will often discover something devastating. They never accumulated the kind of financial independence that was theoretically possible on their income, not because they made dramatic mistakes, because they participated year after year in a game that consumed the margin. The margin is everything. The difference between financial security and financial fragility is not usually dramatic. It is the consistent, quiet accumulation of the gap between what you earn and what you spend. When that gap is consumed by status signaling, there is nothing left to compound. There is nothing building in the background. There is no freedom accumulating on your behalf. And here is what the status game eventually reveals, usually too late. Status purchased through consumption is rented, not owned. The moment you stop paying for it, it disappears. The car depreciates. The fashion becomes last season. The vacation becomes a memory that no longer impresses anyone, including you. What you spent to acquire the signal cannot be recovered, but what you did not spend and chose to invest instead would have been compounding quietly in the background, building towards something the status game can never provide: actual options. James Grubman and Dennis Jaffe, researchers who spent years studying wealthy families and the psychology of money across generations, found something that consistently surprised their subjects. The families who maintained wealth across generations were not the ones who spent the most visibly. They were the ones who had developed a clear internal definition of enough that was not anchored to external comparison. They still enjoyed their money, but they had separated their identity from their spending in a way that most people never managed to do. That separation is the entire game, not the returns, not the investment vehicles, the separation. Because here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people reading about investing want to know what to buy, but the more important question is almost never about what to buy. It is about what drove you to spend before you had the chance to invest. And the answer, almost always, is the hidden status game, the social comparison, the invisible pressure to signal a version of yourself that you believe other people need to see. The people who quietly build financial independence are not usually the ones who earn the most. Studies of millionaire households in the United States consistently find that a large proportion of people with high visible incomes have very little accumulated wealth. Their income is being converted into status in real time, with almost nothing left over. Meanwhile, people with more moderate incomes who learned early to ignore the game, or who were never as susceptible to it, often accumulate far more than anyone around them realized. Thomas Stanley and William Danko documented this in rigorous detail. Their research found that the majority of genuinely wealthy Americans lived in houses well below what their income could support, drove cars most people would consider unremarkable, and spent in ways that made them essentially invisible to anyone playing the status game, not because they were ascetic or joyless, because they had redirected the energy of social comparison toward something else, the quiet satisfaction of options accumulating over time. Options. That is the word worth sitting with. Financial independence is not an account balance. It is the ability to make choices from a position of strength rather than from a position of need. It is the ability to walk away from a job that is wrong for you, to help someone you love without calculating whether you can afford it, to absorb a financial shock without panic, to retire when you are ready rather than when you are forced to. These are not abstract benefits. They are lived experiences, and they are only available to the people who accumulated the margin. The people who gave the margin away, year after year, to the status game do not get those choices. They get the appearance of success for as long as they can maintain the spending. And then the spending stops being sustainable, and the appearance goes with it. So the question is not whether you are playing the status game. You are. Everyone is. The question is whether you are playing it consciously, with clear eyes about what it is costing you and what you are actually getting in return, or whether you are playing it automatically, the way most people do, following the invisible pressure of the group without ever choosing to. There is nothing wrong with spending on things that genuinely matter to you. The problem is spending on things that matter primarily because of what other people will think. That spending has a ceiling on the value it can return to you, because other people's perception of you is not yours to control, and it is not yours to keep. The moment a newer signal appears, the old one is forgotten. The car you bought to feel successful is sitting in the driveway right now. The gap between what you spent on it and what a more modest choice would have cost is not sitting anywhere. It is gone. It was exchanged for a feeling that has already faded. That is the hidden status game. You keep paying for something you never actually get to own. And the people who figured that out early are living entirely different lives because of it. Not louder lives, quieter ones, but with a kind of freedom underneath them that no status purchase has ever been able to buy. If this video changed the way you think about money and status, I think you'll enjoy Financial Freedom Blueprint. It's a practical guide to building lasting wealth through smarter decisions, long-term thinking, and a clear financial plan. The link is in the description below, and if you enjoy videos about investing, money psychology, and building financial freedom, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.